as we go into this, if we can please respect the physical, mental, and emotional boundaries of everyone, not assume anyone's identity, sexuality, gender, health, and background. Let's respect the opinions, beliefs, and experiences of others. And let's be aware of our prejudices, privileges, behavior, and the space we occupy. Let's strive to act with positive intent and take care of each other. And no harassment, discrimination whatsoever, no homophobia, transphobia, racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, or fat phobia will be tolerated. Okay, so I hope that we can all agree on those. And welcome to this talk about sociocracy with Hope Wilder. This event is hosted by Surviving Teachers, which is a support group by, of, and for teachers. We do not agree with the coercive nature of the mainstream schooling system and want to change this by harnessing the principles of self-directed education. I'm Rachel, I'm your host for the evening, and my pronouns are they, them. For any technical queries, please can you contact Bruno in the chat. I just want to, yeah, Bruno just waved. So the structure of the talk for this evening is that we'll have Hope talk about the book prompted by some questions for about 20 minutes, followed by questions and answers from you for another 20 minutes. We will then have breakout rooms for 15 minutes with prompted questions in groups of 3. And finally, we will have a discussion to wrap up the hour-and-a-half session. Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions as we're going along, please feel free to pop them into the chat. You'll also see the link tree to any of the Surviving Teachers links, like our Facebook page, our Instagram, and our registration form. Okay, let's get to Hope. So Hope Wilder is a consultant and trainer for using Sociocracy, a form of collaborative decision-making with children. She is the founder of Pathfinder Community School, a democratic free school using sociocracy with staff, students, and parents. She lives in Durham, North Carolina, USA, and is currently the Sociocracy in Schools Program Manager for Sociocracy for All. She is the author of Let's Decide Together, a guidebook for using sociocracy with children, and you can find more about Hope at the website that I am posting in the chat now. All right, Hope, welcome.
Hello.
So I think maybe what we should start with is a definition of sociocracy, since that's why we're all here. I think it would be nice to get to know what we're here about.
Sure. So sociocracy is a collection of participatory tools based on shared power. And it's both like contains a decision-making process, which is consent decision-making, as well as governance structures, meeting tools, selection process, like an alternative to majority rules elections. And it's based on feedback loops. The governance structure is in circles. So the circles have distributed power instead of one big group making all the decisions. The decisions are delegated out to either roles or circles. So that's my quick definition.
Awesome, thank you. And do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about the book, a little bit about why you wrote the book?
Sure. So just a quick background. I actually also worked at a Sudbury school for a couple months in Baltimore. And I've been to Sudbury Valley School. I started out wanting to start a school because I was in education, dissatisfied with coercive education and wanted to do something different. So as soon as I heard about democratic schools, I was like, that's where it's at. And then I was really disappointed. I loved the school. I loved the kids. I loved the staff, but I was disappointed by how some of the democratic processes seemed to leave people out. And lead to more conflict and more dissent and just dissatisfaction. So I heard about sociocracy and I was like, this is what I've been looking for, you know, an alternative decision-making method where everybody's voices are heard and where anyone can speak up. The minority is really well represented. And also you come up with a solution that everybody can live with for a short amount of time, instead of committing to a decision and having argued about it so much that nobody wants to revisit it. Every decision in Sociocracy has a set check-in time. So it's like, we'll decide this and try it out for a week. And if it doesn't work, we can change it. So it just felt much lighter to me and really resonated with my values. And so I started my school using Sociocracy, and that's pretty much how I got into it. And then I wrote the book. The school had to close because of COVID, which was really tragic. We got to run for a couple of years and have this like beautiful, wild experiment that really was very successful. And I found that I had to adapt the tools that I've been using with the staff and with the board to be more appropriate for children, in terms of just things like making the process really quick, so that we could get the meetings over while the kids, especially the youngest ones, still had the attention span, while still kind of keeping the core of Sociocracy. So after the school closed, I was like, what am I going to do now? I still want to support this movement. And Ted at Sociocracy for All was like, well, why don't you write a book and teach other people how to do this? And I was like, okay. And so then I read the book, and now it exists, and that's still kind of surreal and exciting, but here it is. I have a copy on my desk.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you for writing that. And you can also find the link in the chat. Yeah, we're very happy that that process led you to writing this book. So I think something that was brought up there is a lot of discussion about democracy versus sociocracy. So if you could please just tell us the most important differences between the two.
Sure. So I think the most important differences are the decision-making method, and then also the kind of procedures in a meeting. So I'm specifically talking about like Robert's Rules of Order, and sort of parliamentary procedure as it's used in boards and governments, and anywhere where you see democracy, it's actually kind of a narrower umbrella than like all democracy everywhere. So democracy as it's practiced is majority rules, and it's just can come to a 51-49 vote, as we all know, if you watch the news at all. And in sociocracy, it's a principle of no objections. Instead of are you for or against this proposal, it's do you have an objection to this proposal? All objections are heard and integrated into the proposal. I've been working in a sociocratic nonprofit as well as the school for about 6 years now, and I've never seen an objection that couldn't be overcome by either shortening the term of the proposal, amending the proposal, or integrating the concern into the proposal. Like if somebody's afraid of a bad thing happening, saying, let's check in a week and see if that bad thing is happening. To come up with a proposal that's good enough for now and safe enough to try. So that's consent decision-making kind of in a nutshell. And the advantages of that is that everybody is heard and you don't have a minority who's left out. And some disadvantages are it's very hard to make decisions in large groups. So a majority rules vote is much easier for 300 people. Consent decision-making works best in groups of like 6 to 10. The solution Sociocracy has for that is to have small interlinked circles that have their own decision-making power so that not everybody is involved in every decision. And the idea is that there's feedback from all of the circles and everybody's voices are heard in every decision. If somebody has a really big problem with it, they can bring it back up again. Another difference is in the way you speak. In parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, it's usually raised hands and you have kind of a stack of people who speak, but that can lead, and there's some responding to the previous person, that can lead to kind of an argumentative style. and a style where the loudest people speak up. Even at the Democratic school, I just saw it where quiet people wouldn't say anything, but they might have valuable things to add to the discussion. In Sociocracy, you speak in rounds. So every person has a time to speak in turn. You can always pass, but the rounds bring an equivalence of voice where sometimes, I mean, linguists have studied, like if you have spontaneous speaking or this raised hand style, that the loudest voices can dominate, and that can perpetuate structures like classism, racism, sexism. So speaking in rounds is also an anti-oppression tool that can lead to that equivalence of voice where everyone is included. And I'd say those are pretty much the two major distinctions. There's lots more in terms of process, but that's a good place to start.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that makes a lot of sense. And I think in there you also brought up a few of the tools that you use. So maybe you could introduce 2 or 3 of those. I mean, you mentioned consent, consent decision making, and rounds, and maybe also domains.
Sure. So I'm going to do a slide for this, just
Perfect.
2 or 3 slides. So as I was speaking about, here's just kind of a summary of what I was talking about, where raised hands or natural flow kind of conversation can lead to only some speaking, debate, and also tangents and digressions, especially with the natural flow, like just whoever feels moved to speak, then it can get on these long tangents. I'm sure everybody's been in a meeting where that has happened. And then in rounds, everyone speaks. It includes the voices of the quiet as well as the opinionated. There's no debate or crosstalk, and you stay on topic. In terms of implementing this in the classroom, it's really great for getting feedback. So even before you make decisions together, I recommend implementing rounds for things like class discussions. You know, what did you think of this reading? Let's do a round. And see what it feels like to include everyone's voices in a more structured way, rather than just letting there be a natural flow or raised hands. You can also use it to ask questions like, how do you want to be treated in this class? Or how do you think we should treat each other, and generate ideas and feedback that then can lead to decisions that you make together. So I'd say generally the first step to making any decision together in a group is to do rounds. Next, kind of to visualize consent and objections. So there's your preference, which might be your yes vote, your range of tolerance, which is like, what can you live with? And both of things together make up consent. Outside of consent is an objection, and an objection means you have a reason that the choice that's being proposed would damage the aim of your group somehow. And I'll explain that more a little bit, but or it would, if it would somehow cause harm, if it's not good enough for now, it's not safe enough to try. That's kind of like our catchphrase. Is it good enough for now? Is it safe enough to try? Does it go against the aim? So if the aim of your group is to keep everyone safe, then maybe playing Red Rover would go against the aim because people's arms keep getting twisted. So I object to Red Rover in my school playground. And that's something, a discussion point, like, is there a way we can modify this game to make it safer? Another example of an aim might be, our aim is to allow for a self-directed space. An aim is kind of like a goal of your group. So if a parent came in and a parent said, we want to implement a mandatory math curriculum, both it's none of their business, like as in the domain of the curriculum belongs to the members of the school, that's a whole nother thing, is domains that I'll talk about later. But somebody coming in with that would go against the aim. We could say that violates self-direction, I have an objection to it, and that could stop a proposal. Then next, here's an example of like one person's preference, and the question is the question or the aim is everyone safe and okay with going outside today, considering the weather and the ambient conditions? This is an example I use with kids because it can get kind of silly and kind of fun. So starting out with what you like, say you like if it's really sunny weather, if it's, I said the 70s, so like 20 Celsius, just what people call nice weather. You might be okay with going outside if it's light rain, if it's a little bit hot, a little bit cool, kind of a wider range of tolerance. Then it might not be good enough if it's really cold, if there's heavy rain. It might not be safe enough to try if there's a thunderstorm, if there's a tornado, if there's a hurricane. I said if you're inside a fire, a volcano, that's an objection. Or if it's freezing cold in the Arctic, the Antarctic. Then the question is there any way to resolve these objections? So we're moving beyond, stop, it's raining outside, we can't go outside. And instead saying, can we get a jacket and a raincoat? Can we go to a picnic shelter? In a tornado, let's go hide in the closet. In a fire, like get a firefighter suit on, or realistically you would run away, but it's like possible, you know, for somebody to do that. And if you have lots of special clothing, it's safe to go outside in the Arctic. And my last thing about consent decision making is basically there's this pattern of understand, explore, and then decide. So when somebody presents a proposal, you ask clarifying questions in a round so that the goal is for everyone to understand. The second is to have reactions. So like, what do you think about it? I like it, I don't like it. I think this part could be improved, just opinions, and that's exploring the idea. Then you go to a consent round, and if anyone has objections, you integrate them. And that's the basic like 3-step process. So that is all my screen to share. Stop sharing.
Thank
And,
you.
oh, I forgot a whole thing, which is domains, but maybe we can stop there for reactions and then I can go to domains.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think what I really like and took away from that was the fact, like, especially with those consent bubbles, of this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm okay with for now, and this is what I'm not okay with, and looking at objections in a different way. Does anyone have questions so far? I'll keep checking the chat as we go, but then
Not a
yeah, maybe we
question.
can.
It's not a
Yes.
question, but I just want to give this sounds great, Hope. I'm really glad to hear all the details here, and it's a blessing to benefit from your years of expertise on how to make all this work. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah.
I
And
have a
then
question.
yes.
So Hope, I'm sure you're going to get to this later, but you just mentioned the third thing would be the consent round in which you integrate objections.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering a little bit more about how that looks. But as I said, I'm pretty sure that's coming up later anyway. Just wanted to flag that.
I can address it now.
Sure.
That's easy. So I like this acronym. It's ACT. And it stands for amend. A is amend, which means you modify the proposal. C is concern. And if somebody has a concern, you integrate it into the proposal by setting a check-in date and asking, is X happening? Like, is the concern happening? And the third is the term. So just shortening, how soon will we check in on the proposal? How long is the proposal valid? And you can shorten the term to as short as 1 day. Or an hour, let's try this out for an hour, see what happens. At the school, we would do it in terms of 1 week. So for kind of what you would consider classroom or school agreements. And I'll give a quick example. The kids wanted to run in the hallways, and the teachers have the domain of safety, and the teachers were like, no, no running in the hallways. We object on basis of safety. It's not safe enough to try. And the kids were like, well, this is a democratic school and it's not fair because we need to move and our bodies want to run, and it's no fair if we can't do that. And what if we just try it out for one day? And we have rules like you have to run carefully. And then they came up with another rule, which was no chasing games inside, because people just get too excited and they chase and they get fast and loud. And the staff was like, okay, it's safe enough to try for one day. So that's an example of both modifying the proposal by saying no chasing games and shortening the term, saying we're going to try instead of for 1 week, we'll try it for one day and we'll check in. And the question at the check-in is anybody getting hurt? So we tried it for one day. Nobody got hurt. The kids ran carefully, which was really cute. You know, they're just kind of like quietly running carefully. They got less careful as it went on, but still, like, that rule stood for years and nobody ever got hurt from running in the hallways. And I would never have known that if we hadn't tried. And, you know, the kids reminded me it's okay to try things and, you know, to work through these objections. So I hope that's a good example.
That is so beautiful. That brings tears to my eyes. Yes, I will remember that one. Thank you.
And also, like, they skip, they jump, they roll on the floor. You know, it's like a beautiful thing to see that kind of freedom. And the next question, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Hope whether there is a way of dealing with sort of diametric opposition when somebody has a concern or objection. There's a million examples out there, but I can't think of one right now. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
I think so. I mean, the kinds of decisions that don't lend themselves well to consent decision making are aesthetic decisions and permanent decisions. So, like, should we chop down this tree? There has to be diametric, you know, what did you say? Opposition, because you're either for cutting down the tree or you're against it. You can't try it out. You can't cut it down and then uncut it down. There are ways to work with that in terms of saying, well, can we visualize this? Can we list the pros and cons? You know, there's process you can do, but at the ultimate decision, people might still object. And that's really tricky. And you might have to resort to another decision-making method, like saying, we're going to hire an arborist and we're going to follow their recommendations. Maybe the tree is about to fall on somebody's house and it's a safety hazard. Can we plant another tree somewhere else that will be safer or whatever? But and then aesthetic decisions, do we want to paint this wall green or blue? I hate green, I hate blue. And again, it might just come down to, like, let's delegate this to one person, or, you know, let's try beige. How do you get so many beige walls? Because people have strong feelings about it. So there are still ways to work within that system. You can also consent. You can consent to delegating the decision or consent to a majority rules vote. So you're still in sociocracy, but you're delegating that to a different decision-making process.
Thank you.
Then there's a question in the chat. What about time? I only have 2.5 hours a day as an aftercare practitioner. I feel if each objection was discussed, it would take so much time out of their playtime. Honestly, I haven't seen that be a problem, especially just because if, as the person, like the teacher or facilitator usually starts out being the one to make the proposals, the first step is listening. So remember, the first step is, what do you think about this proposal? What's your opinion? And you can gauge everybody's opinions. And in that moment, you can kind of modify it to work for everyone. You hear what people don't like, and just, it's kind of a magical process. And I can't give too many tips for it, but in that synthesizing the proposal step, you try to take everybody's input and find something that everyone can agree with. Usually with kids, they agree almost immediately to try something out and they want to get out of the meeting as soon as possible. if a kid objects really strongly, I might say, let's put this decision on hold and let me talk one-on-one with the kid, especially if they have strong feelings about it, you know, to kind of iron those things out. And there's one more consent piece that I want to teach you guys before I go on to more questions. And that is with the kids, I use thumbs up, thumbs down, and thumbs sideways. So thumbs up is I like it, thumbs down is I have an objection, and thumbs sideways is I could go either way. It's within my range of tolerance. It's good enough for now. It's safe enough to try. Like, I'm okay with it. And that's super helpful because a lot of kids might just be okay with something and not have a strong objection. So I hope that answered the question. I'm going to leave it up to Rachel. Do you want to do more questions in the chat, or should we go back to our outline?
I think I just want to, yeah, I love that thumb method as well. I just want to ask, I think, 2 questions that I think might be relevant to people. So maybe, oh yes, you wanted to speak about domains.
Yes, super important for anybody working inside a system. So the domain is what you have power over. In a school, in a public school, the teacher is not going to have power over the curriculum. So you can't hand that power to the students. You might not have power over running in the hallways or things like that, but you do have power within your classroom to do things like organize the classroom, classroom agreements, like how do we treat each other in our classroom? How do we keep our classroom tidy? How do we get work done? And you can implement domains within the classroom where you find things that are safe enough for the kids to take over completely. And I really recommend as much as you can to give them the power to make decisions together and to just solely be there as facilitator. And kids can adjust if they know, okay, this is in the teacher's domain, this is in the student's domain, and this is where we work together. So like, for example, the students have complete control over how to do this one project. The teachers and the students work together to figure out how to cover the curriculum in a way that works for everybody, but the curriculum is decided by the state. So the kids, if they know like where does the power lie, they can really easily adapt to that. And I think any amount of autonomy, any amount of decision-making power makes such a huge difference. And it's been shown to make a difference in things from behavior, conflict, attendance, investment, and outcomes. There's like statistical evidence that these things are true for collaborative decision-making. So yeah, it's really important to figure out those domains, or like I said, at my school, the financial legal picture was in the adults domain. And that's different from a Sudbury school. In the Sudbury school, it kind of belongs to everybody. So it's the all school meeting has the ultimate power. But the adults we were the ones who could get sued. So we had the finance legal power and we had input from the children. So I hope that answers that. And I also am really interested to hear maybe later what context people are in and what domains they think they could give to the children. Or share with the children, because I'm always looking for more ideas that I can share with people too.
Thank you. Yeah, that clears that up, and it's a beautiful explanation. And I'm excited to hear what others have to say. And then I think my second to last question would be, and I think you sort of covered it, was how to use these principles of sociocracy even if you have limited power.
Right, so I think the domains part is key. So starting out, figuring out what can I share, and then starting small. So starting with, okay, class, we're going to take 15 minutes. So it's not eating into the instruction time too much. At the beginning of the year, we're going to sit down and talk about how we want to treat each other, make a list, consent to it, thumbs up, thumbs sideways, can we try this out? then you have like a baseline of agreements that you can come back to when things get hard. You can always modify it. And set the precedent, like we make decisions together here about how we treat each other. And then just adding little bits like doing rounds and discussions, like I said, letting kids have autonomy over how they get projects done. And I think it's really good if you have any kind of choice over like where to go on field trips, that's really great. What kinds of materials the kids need in the classroom to get the work done that they want to get done. Kid-led fundraisers are amazing, and any kind of shared budget is just magical because it's like a math exercise, it's a consent decision-making exercise. And it's really easy usually to get buy-ins from parents for fundraisers. I think it's most important the ideas come from the kids. Like if it's a lemonade stand or a bake sale, don't decide that for them, but have them discuss, because it doesn't really matter to the school whether it's a lemonade stand or a bake sale, but it might matter enormously to the kids to have the investment in the process, you know, and then say, okay, here's how much money we have to start with, how many lemons can we buy? So I hope that kind of paints a picture of the different kinds of ways you can kind of look between the cracks for the things that don't matter to the administration, but that might matter a lot to the kids.
Oh, that does. Thank you. And I'm sure we will be getting some more questions on that. I see Sydney has a question. If we can just hold on one moment for that. And then I think my final question relating to you and the book and sociocracy in general is, what are the common challenges in schools using sociocracy, and how do you suggest to approach these?
Yeah, so I would say in schools where there's whole school sociocracy, the problems are different. If they're democratically free run schools, it's kind of similar to democratic free school problems, just like people problems, things come up, there are arguments, there's conflict, and it's really important to have conflict and communication processes outside of sociocracy. Like rounds help a lot, but it's any process can get jammed up if somebody has such hurt feelings about it that they can't move forward. So I've seen a lot of schools adopt nonviolent communication very successfully. You should ask Gina about it. She's an expert at using NVC with kids. And I've seen a lot of really productive things with restorative practices. So both restorative circles or restorative justice as an auxiliary conflict, and what happens when things go wrong or sideways. And it's important to have the parents and the staff bought into that too. Then trying to impose sociocracy without everybody consenting to it can be bad. Like having a top-down decision where one person decides we're using sociocracy for now is not following the principle of consent. So you need to consent to using sociocracy by asking everyone, hey, I have this new decision-making method. Are you okay with trying it out for X number of decisions, and then checking back in on that? And I encourage doing that with children too, just saying like, generally, if it gives them more power, they're going to agree to it. But saying like, hey, I want to try this out, where we share responsibility for cleaning the classroom and you guys get to help make decisions about how we do that. Are you willing to try that out for a couple of weeks and see what happens, or try it out for a month, give enough time. So those are the two important things for those kind of schools. In a traditional school, the biggest problem is no support from the administration is number one. Number two is what happens when it's working really well. Your kids are so happy and excited and motivated to be in your classroom. Then they go to the classroom next door and there's an authoritarian top-down structure where they don't have a voice. And where if you talk to that teacher, they say, well, you just have to discipline the kids. It doesn't work. It can be very ego threatening for your peers. And those are two really hard things to work through. And it's like, I think it takes a lot of resilience and personal resolve, and people skills, people skills to advocate to the administration. I think my methods are working. To find ways to measure what you're doing so that you can kind of prove in the metrics that matter to the system, like the grades are getting better. I hate grades, but if they are getting better, point that out. And seeing if colleagues are willing to adopt these practices. It's best if it's school-wide. And sometimes the opposite happens. A colleague is like, what are you doing? I want to try that. It seems like it's really working. But I've more often heard the opposite.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very insightful and helpful. I was wondering if we wanted to put some sociocracy into practice into the session, would we, with the questions and answers, do a round? And then by doing a round, would that be going through each participant and asking them if they have a question? Or how could I incorporate some sociocracy into this?
Yeah, you could say, let's try that out and see how it goes. And then if people like the other method better, we could do the other method, raised hands at the end of the session. And I would recommend collecting all the questions and then answering them so that everybody has time to voice their question. And if there's some that are kind of the same, we can clump them.
Okay.
And you could even just have everybody put it in the chat, because that would be faster than asking, but then it wouldn't be around. So it's up to you.
Okay.
Maybe a round of questions and reactions. That would be very sociocratic.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, I'd like to try that. So should I just go through the list as I have it here?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, cool. Well, I will start with Bev. If you would like to participate, or if you have any questions.
Hello. No, I don't have any questions. I'm loving the conversation. I think my heart's where your heart is. It's the actual practicalities of how you move to doing that, which is great to hear.
Thank you. And next we have Carl.
Hi, everybody. I think my question was, is it mandatory to take part in the meeting? I've had different experience. I've never really tried this, but I've done democracy before. And I've had these two different extreme, one where it took a long time for the kids to be willing to be in a meeting. And then another group that they immediately wanted to participate. So I wonder about making it mandatory or if it's optional.
Awesome, thank you. So what I'll do is when we have questions, I will write them down and then we'll come back to them, Hope, or would you prefer to answer them now? Okay, we'll come back to them. Perfect. Thank you. And Elena, I hope I'm pronouncing that, or Lana, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, the first one's right, Elena. My question would be, like, at the start of working together with a group, how do you go about setting like those more long-term shared rules? Let's say like creating a safe space or informing what are those domains that are not in your control, like just maybe some practical advice how to do that, and how is that information received when you also discuss like starting a sociocratic practice with the group?
Thank you.
I'm loving it. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And I was wondering if Bruno, if just for a second, if you could please help me with just jotting down the questions, please.
Yeah.
Thank
I'll be
you.
putting it in the Google Docs and then copy them in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Next we have Esther. Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. We can come back. Okay, Gina.
My first question, when I'm not putting my full attention on something and I'm in a round, my first question is, what kind of round are we doing? Is this a clarification round or is this a reaction round? So is this a
This is
combination of the
both.
two?
Yeah, it's both. Do you have questions and do you have reactions?
Oh, well, okay, so I'll just react by saying I'm really stimulated by all of what, not only what Hope is presenting, but just the kinds of questions people are asking. I live in a sociocratic community, co-housing community, and there's never, the learning is endless. So even somebody like me who's really, steeped into this, and I'm also a retired teacher, so I just love this whole venue. So that's my reaction. Check.
I don't know if,
Rachel might be
yeah, I
frozen.
think, yeah. Okay.
Do you want to call next, Bruno?
Yeah, sure. Well, I will continue with a different order. So Thomas, please.
Okay, and big thanks to everyone again. So my questions is about the mechanics of the actual scheduling and the running of the, I don't even call them meetings or sessions, or who's the facilitator? How does the facilitator get picked? Are the young people ever involved in that role? And is the agenda important? Are there minutes taken? And lots of things in that direction generally.
I'm back. Thank you. So we've got, we'll be getting to the questions just now, and next we have Geordie. Geordie, going once, going twice.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
There we go.
Sorry.
Cool.
Yeah, I love this approach. It feels very wholesome and just everything I've been looking for, I feel. I'll definitely be getting your book, Hope, and reading it and hoping to build my classroom with this, with the consent of everybody involved, of course, and as I develop as a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Nadia.
Nadia is responding in the chat.
I think Rachel is frozen again.
Yeah, I think Rachel is having some problems with the internet, so maybe we can continue with. Did you talk? Okay, so Stephanie, I'm continuing the order I have on my screen. So.
Oh, good. So this makes me feel calm and peaceful. And my question is, I would like to try using this in a adult not-for-profit cooperative board that I chair. And I'm wondering if you have a recommendation for something I can send to them as an introduction to it that's super, like a super quick video or article that I could recommend they take a look at. Thank you.
Awesome. Then we have Nora.
Hello. I don't have any concrete questions so far, but I'm just soaking it all in, and it's all so helpful, and you're presenting it so well. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you so much. And yeah, I especially feel like this answers to some of my well, some of the dilemmas I've had with thinking about democratic schooling. So I think this is a very interesting approach, and yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. I don't know if Rachel is back, if you want to continue.
I am back. I'm trying to sort out my internet. It's being a bit of an issue. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you, Nura. Next we have Pooja. Is that correct?
Yes, Pooja.
Pooja, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks, Rachel. I had a question. I actually wanted to know how to explain the elementary children on what sociocracy is. It's like, I know I have understood it, and like even in my family, we know about it. But then, I mean, for me, I'm 19 years old, and I find it a bit difficult to put my thoughts, you know, in a proper way, and then actually go and communicate with the kids and to explain things. So if you could give some tips on that. Thank you.
And Rachel froze again, so we might continue with Vera, please. Okay. I don't know if Vera is here. So continuing the countdown from Rachel. 1 and 2, 3. Okay. So, okay. Good, thanks. All right, I think we are done with the round, or are we missing anyone? Sydney, sorry. Please.
I just want to add, want to add to Thomas's list of mechanics about my question about who gets to call a meeting, how often, what's the procedure for that?
Okay, thank you. So how would we continue now, Hope? Should I put the questions in the chat and then you pick to answer, or how would it be done in a Sociocratic manner as we are practicing and learning?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to look at the list of the questions. You put it in the Google Doc?
Yeah, well, I put it also on the chat here in the.
Okay. I'll just read through, I think the logistical questions about I'll start with how to explain to children and then go to logistical questions. So with children, that's actually where the phrase for the book came from. Let's decide together. Is I just tell them, here's a way we can decide together, period. I explain thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. I don't even use the word consent. Sometimes I'll explain consent after they've been doing it for a couple months. Then I'll say, okay, thumbs up and sideways means consent. Consent means you're okay with something. And we also talk about like bodily autonomy and consent. And so that those conversations go together really well. Just like you have the right to consent to touch. You have the right to say no to touch. You have the right to consent to the decisions that we're making. And yeah, I don't use the terms is really the secret, just saying, and I'll tell the kids, it's like the rules to a game. Like, I know this game, it's called Let's Decide Together. Let's learn how to play it. And the game is about making decisions. Does that answer the question, Pooja?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And then starting using sociocracy in a group, practical matters and such, there's a great book called Who Decides, Who Decides by Ted Rao. And that's great for like a larger organization. Basically, you start with one circle and expand from there, and everybody consents to it along the way. And you're continuously evaluating, is sociocracy working for us? What parts are working, what parts aren't working? As far as meetings at the school that I ran, we did mandatory 15-minute meetings every day. Then a 15-minute meeting that had mandatory parts and optional parts. So the idea was everybody comes and hears the proposals, the issues of the day. And we call that what's happening. So what's happening right now might be a problem. It might be an opportunity. It might be, let's go on a field trip. It might be, people are being too loud. And then they have a chance to join in on the problem solving. We would split up into breakout groups, and each problem solving group makes its own proposal. And then everyone comes back together and consents to the proposal together. Or actually, no, we would consent in breakout groups and then come back to the group and basically announce the decision. Like, you weren't in the group that made the decision, so it's optional as long as you don't mind not being present in the decision-making process. With the children, all of the agendas and everything are just sticky notes. And I have a whole process, and it's in the book. The book actually has agendas. It has 7 meeting agendas for 7 different kinds of meetings. Everything from selecting somebody to a role. Somebody asked, can kids be facilitator? Absolutely, I highly recommend it. And usually they need to see it modeled for a couple months because, or, say 8 sessions so that they know the ropes. And I think that role modeling is much more effective than like trying to explain it in a didactic way. I've seen some really great kid facilitated meetings, and it's nice to have an adult there who knows the processes so the kid can say like, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation if something comes up? Yeah, so usually the adult starts out as the facilitator, and then you can select a kid facilitator. The agenda for the school meetings, the way the agenda worked was anybody could bring up a problem and put it on a sticky note and put it up on the board. And then the staff would go through with whoever was interested to prioritize what's the most important issue. Is there a time pressing issue? And we would only work on 3 issues per week to keep the meetings really short. In adult-led meetings, the agendas are much more thorough and there's like lots more systems, but yeah, the sticky note system worked really well with the kids. And I think that is all the questions. And yeah, I could keep going explaining agendas and stuff for a long time, but it's easier to read the book. Ha ha ha. I find that so funny. Yes, the content is the same in the ebook as the hard copy, and there's downloadables, like all of the agendas, the worksheets and cheat sheets are all downloadable online, and there's a link in the ebook every time that there's one of those things.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry about my internet, but let's move on. I was thinking we could quickly move to breakout rooms for 10 to 15 minutes now. And it will be in groups of 3. The breakout rooms won't be recorded. And there are a few things that you can I'm going to throw out a few things, you don't have to use them, but what feels most useful to you and what did you get out of this? If you have any more questions to reflect on, and I think earlier it was really nice would be to bring maybe your context and your domain, as Hope brought up earlier. So Bruno will set us off into our breakout rooms now, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Yeah, the rooms are ready and I will open them now. If it happens that you end up with someone who are maybe not connected or anything, please come back to the main room and then we'll send you to a different room just in case someone has connection problems. And then I don't know if Hope, if you want to just hop from room to room, you can do it as you have the co-host rights. And yeah, I'll be in the main room. So if you need anything or whatever, just join us here and yeah, and see you in 15 minutes.
Okay, shall we continue with the recording then? Awesome. Okay, so I think what we'll do is go group by group, each breakout room. So I think your breakout rooms would have had breakout room 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or however many. Yeah, and then just you can tell us what you discussed and any questions you have, just keeping in mind that we halves up, but Bruno and myself are more discussion that people would like to have. So breakout room 1.
Whoever that is.
Was it us? I think.
Yeah, Bev, Elena, and Vera.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we shared each other's context with each other, and one of us was working in a democratic school and was like, yeah, would like to co-opt some of the sociocracy methods, and then at least I had some thoughts about enabling everybody to have a voice in discussions when not everybody uses oral language as easily, or oral communication. And we agreed that it's good to think about those details, but we didn't have many concrete ideas, except for, I think Bev gave a good point about, like, just in the start, establishing that everybody has needs and how will we work with each other's needs. Well, Bev and Vera, anything else? Am I forgetting something important?
No, I think that was good.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Then we can move on to, I think, room 3 with Nadia, Nura, and Stephanie.
Go for it.
No, I was going to say the same to you.
I was just going to
spokesperson. And Nadia,
yeah, but you're the quiet one.
You're the comfortable.
Sorry, we really connected over the idea of just the rounds, and I was saying how I'm generally an outspoken person that uses my voice, but I'm always going against the majority. So I was just thinking about how helpful and supportive it would be if people in a round felt safe, who maybe normally wouldn't have spoke up against the majority, to then speak up, and maybe it would make someone like me, who's always going against the majority, not feel so lonely. And Stephanie, you can share your side of that.
I was just saying how I, as always, the very, very quiet one and always afraid to speak up, and I would never ever speak up in school and as a younger adult, how this going around the circle allows me to speak up without having to find courage to do so. And it had never occurred to me that that would not only benefit me and my ability to bring my ideas, but it would benefit somebody like Nadia, who had no issue speaking up, but felt lonely because people like me were too scared to speak up. So that was a very serendipitous conversation in the breakout room. And we talked about lots of other things as well.
That's awesome. That's a great space to find connection. And then let's move to room 4, Gina, Sydney, and Thomas.
Thomas, go for it.
Well, we had a great time. The question I brought up, and Sydney and I went back and forth, and Gina had some good feedback on the aspects of it, but it was basically, what's wrong with majority democracy? And are we helping or not helping the young people by protecting them from the problems of majority democracy? And I've had personal experience of seeing that it's not a problem. In fact, there's quite some serious benefits from dealing with the shortcomings of majority democracy for the young people. But I just want to say, I really appreciate Hope's deep expertise in developing the details of sociocracy, and she's coming from a full majority democracy experience. So this is really powerful stuff. I'm going to buy the book, Hope, so I can read the details. Thank you.
So we did talk about the fact that there may be some benefit to having young people grow up with another alternative that they might possibly even bring into their adult life.
Gina?
Yeah, my point was that at a very young age, children can feel pain from the mainstream paradigm. And my example was that people go to jail. And, you know, I had many students whose parents were in jail. So to be able to present an alternative to that, that's just the justice system of the paradigm, is, I think, something that they can appreciate. And whether they understand it or not, I think bringing alternatives to something that we can all feel there's something amiss in the paradigm. That was my point.
Sounds like some awesome discussions were had, and I'm glad that this space allowed for that. And then we just have a few minutes left. So I was wondering if maybe Hope, if you had anything you wanted to say. Yeah, I personally just want to say thank you to everyone for joining and for being a part of this. And thank you, Hope, for opening up and sharing everything with us.
Yeah, I have one more plug, which is that I'm hosting with Sociocracy for All a Sociocracy in Schools conference. We've got a ton of speakers who have led schools using Sociocracy. We have an alumni or alumnus, I guess, and also a leader in a youth organization that's youth-led using Sociocracy. So it's a lot of different contexts. Some talk about the integrating NVC and sociocracy, also conflict resolution models, and several people brought up trauma and kind of working with trauma that comes up just as people work together in systems using sociocracy. So it's going to be really interesting. Love to see you there. Share it with all your friends. And yeah, I've just had, this has been a very stimulating conversation, and hearing people's reactions. I'm really glad, Rachel, that we did that sociocratic question process so that people could feel like, what does it feel like to just say, we're going to speak in a round. That's the way it is. This is our structure for now. So that was really cool. And I'm feeling very enriched and enlivened. I'm curious if anybody else has anything they need from me before we head out. Bruno?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say something that happened like behind the curtains, right? No, because that idea of doing the sociocratic round just came from Rachel, and I think that's the best example as well about self-direction, right? We didn't talk about that, and it just happened because it felt right, and I think it really fit the whole situation, and just want to like celebrate that and say that I think that's what we are doing here, right? We are trying to do what we are, I don't know, preaching or something. So thanks for doing that, Rachel, and yeah, and I'm really happy to have seen everyone here, and yeah, thank you for coming and really like enriching and energy giving discussion. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Rachel, it was a good idea to do the practical method. I wanted to just ask, is the record going to be somewhere available for us? It will?
Yeah, if the magics of the interwebs work, we'll put it on YouTube. So we are trying to do it. So, and if not, we can always send it to the participants, but we'll try to put it out there. And so that's on the intention.
Okay, great.
And then I was wondering if everyone would be all right if I took a screenshot of all of us. I'll blur out everyone's names and just for something that we could maybe put on social media to say we had this thing and it was awesome. If you're not comfortable with it, I totally understand. Cool. Okay, let me get this ready then. Okay, and everyone smile. Got it. Thank you.
Big thanks, Rachel and Bruno and Hope. It's amazing, everybody else. Thank you.